Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Blue Raider Podcast, hosted by Jake Bolden and presented by the Conseco Group General Contracting and Mighty Dog Roofing. Don't miss another Tuesday episode by subscribing to the podcast on all streaming platforms or catch our visual presentation uploaded every week on YouTube. Don't miss our next ticket giveaways by subscribing and following on all Blue Raider Podcast social media accounts on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Blue Raider Pod. Welcome back to the Blue Raider Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Bolden. In today's episode, we are going to be talking a little bit of hoops with your favorite Sam Doughton, and then we'll be doing a softball preview with Assistant Coach of Hitting Bryce Brentz, so don't miss all that action. But before we get into today's episode, I want to take just a second to thank our sponsors, beginning with the Conseco Group. Since 1987, the Conseco Group has been turning dreams into reality. Whether it's pre-construction consulting, construction management, design build, or renovations and improvements, we're here to exceed your expectations. At Conseco Group, we don't just deliver, we deliver with passion, precision, and unparalleled quality. Our hands-on approach ensures your investment is maximized and your vision is brought to life. From Clarksville down to Columbia and beyond, trust the Conseco Group to handle every detail with expertise and care. If you're ready to build your future, contact the Conseco Group today at 615-298-9907 or visit their website at theconsecogroup.com today. And a special thank you to Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East. When it comes to your home, trust Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East for all your needs. As a veteran and locally owned business, we're honored to be one of just 11 Owens Corning contractors nationwide to win their prestigious service award. From roofing and gutters to windows and siding, our expert team delivers top quality craftsmanship and unmatched service. If we're here to protect your home with pride and precision, choose Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East, where excellence is a tradition. Call them today at 615-MD-ROOFS. That's ROOFS, or visit their website at mightydogroofing.com to schedule your free quote today. Again, thank you to the Conseco Group and Mighty Dog Roofing for sponsoring today's episode. Now, before we get into our first guest, Sam Doughton, I want to take just a second to remind you, if you're not already, subscribe to us on YouTube as well as your favorite streaming service at Apple, or if you're on Spotify, make sure you're doing that. That always supports us as far as algorithm goes and in the future. And of course, on social media, we have a giveaway coming up for baseball season. If you aren't already following us on social media, get there now. We are doing a giveaway. We are doing season tickets for baseball season. Make sure you go on there. You will like or retweet wherever it is that you find that post. And every like, retweet you do on all of our social media platforms, that's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. If you were able to share and like that post, that is an extra entry into our giveaway. So I don't want you to miss out on that. So make sure when you're done with this episode, head that way to social media and find that post and enter it for your chance to win. The winner will be announced at next week's episode. Now, let's get into our first guest of the day. It is Sam Doughton. Sam, how's it going?
Doing great, Jake. Great job on those ad reads. Always good to hear from the Conseco Group and Mighty Dog Roofing, and glad that your subscriber numbers continue to grow. As you build this platform, just over a year now, you've been doing this. So excited to be back. I'm not sure I am the most frequent guest. I think some of your Go Middle friends might be, but I'm certainly close to it, and I'm very proud of that fact.
Well, I can say with confidence, there's no one that is more knowledgeable, that is around it more than anybody else that comes on here. So, of course, I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and of course, behind the scenes on short notice. So, a big props to all the information that we're going to be able to gather from you today as we talk a little hoops from the jump here. What a weekend it was, for better or for worse. But when we talk about men's basketball, all things considered, as the dust is settled, you're still in second place. The world didn't come crashing to a halt after the unexpected loss on Thursday with Issam Mustafa being out, but we see what the team is when he returns on Saturday, a matchup that always kind of makes you clench your teeth with UTEP and their ability to turn the ball over. But the Raiders did what was necessary, took care of the ball in the second half, scored when they needed to late down the stretch, unlike they could on Thursday. And as I said, they're in second place, and you feel a little bit better going into a very tough road stretch this week.
No question, Jake. The for better or for worse about Conference USA, there's 8 teams within 2 games of one another in the conference standings. So middle's in second place, but it's only by 1 game, and there's 5 teams, with that one game gap. So you have to continue to put together good performances on the road, good performances at home. And, it was unfortunate Issam Mustafa was dealing with some lower leg injuries, lower body injuries. that kept him out of Thursday night's game against Mexico State, because he would have played a big role there. On Mexico State really attacked the boards, attacked Middle Tennessee in the post, and continued to struggle, sort of scoring guard-wise, which has been a consistent theme for the Aggies sort of in the first half of conference play. But Middle still had their chances. I think they had 4 or 5 possessions down 2 with the ball sort of in the last, 3 or 4 minute stretch, sort of after the last media timeout. So plenty of chances to take the lead. It was unfortunate that they could not get that last shot to fall. Would have been a big one to pick one up shorthanded in that one as well. But a nice bounce back, like you said, on Saturday against a defensive scheme that caused the teams a lot of problems. UTEP was number 1 in the country in forcing opponent turnovers entering that game, and Middle handled it well, only 12, which is just above what their average is this season, and against a team that does as much havoc as they do, a pretty good margin there for Middle Tennessee, particularly when Kim Weston had 14 assists by himself. So you had that positive assist to turnover ratio in that game. Wild game stat wise, Justin Porter hit 1,000 points in his career, 38th Blue Raider to do that. Cam Weston's about 50 points away from that mark as well. So good chance we'll see him hit that mark at some point in the second half of conference play. And, Isam Mustafa, yet another double for him as well. Particularly, he wasn't quite 100% going into that game, but gritted his teeth, got through it. And, if he had made, just a few more of his free throws, it would have been, a 2010 type game for him.
And not to take anything away with Mustafa being out, because again, you worry about the state of the team coming in Thursday. I roll into the gym on Thursday night and see that he's dressed, but it's clear and evident that he's not going to be playing. But I want to give tons of credit to Chris Loof. And one thing that we notice about his game, and again, he's not going to be the double machine, not yet anyways, that we see with Mustafa. That's not necessarily his style. But with 35 minutes played, he was able to hold his own, and all things considered, I don't want to take anything away, but you see when he gets subbed out, the plus minus at the 5 position falls down to 10. And that's kind of the make or break in that situation on that night. Was you lose by 4. You'd like to think if you have some better production, but you got to give Chris all the credit you can. He played 35 minutes down there and did it without fouling. So again, it's something that Chris is not necessarily accustomed to, because he does foul quite often for the few minutes he played, but he was able to stay on the floor all night Thursday. And I think that goes above and beyond kind of the anticipation, because I could realistically see where Thursday night could get out of hand if Chris does not remain on the floor. So I give a big props to him, as well as everybody else being able to make that game as competitive as you could without Isam. But as you move into this next week, with Jacksonville State on Thursday, Kennesaw State on Saturday, both of these programs have been nearly unstoppable on their home floors. As we already touched on, Jacksonville State is the first place team in Conference USA, and I think I would prefer to play them the Thursday night game, as we seem to be playing better on the Thursday night road contest games than we do on the Saturdays. But as far as this week goes, and even moving into the next week, you have the road game in Bowling Green. What are you wanting to see from these Blue Raiders to kind of see them get themselves back in the flow of things, continue to push for that 1 seed as the season dwindles down?
Well, it's a good point about the Thursday games. Obviously, with those games, you have, basically a full week of practice to sort of scout, once you're done. Most teams take that Sunday off, and then when you're back in the gym on Monday, you can fully dive into the scout. Whereas with the Saturday game, you really don't have a ton of time to get into. You sort of have to pick your poison. Do you want to really focus defensively? You want to focus on, sort of what the offensive sets they run, if they're a team that runs a lot of sets, or do you want to focus on, the type of defense they run, if they run something unusual or unique? So these Thursday night matchups, you can scout out a little bit better. And that, I think, has helped Middle a lot, because they've done well sort of defensive scouting wise, I think, throughout most of the season, in targeting guys that are typically the team's best players. They held Otis Frazier pretty in check for UTEP this past weekend. A couple of the more dominant guards for New Mexico State also, didn't get a chance to really get off their shots that they're working. So I think that's going to be key. You got to have that defense to travel. I'd like to see Justin Buford, get back to what we know he can be as a defender. He had a couple rough games, only played 5 minutes on Saturday against UTEP. So him stepping up and being the defender we know he can be on the perimeter is going to be big, for this team this week, particularly against Kennesaw State, which has those 2 great guards that put a lot of pressure on you defensively. But Jacksonville State, obviously, when in the win in the Glass House is the last loss that the Gamecocks have had. Nicholson going out played a big role in that game, so they're going to have to find a way to handle him in the defensive glass, and maybe the emergence of Chris Loof, as you mentioned, sort of as a defensive anchor. He's a very crafty defender, both in the post and on the perimeter when he needs to be. Having him available and, with the growth he's shown rebounding the ball, particularly in the second half against the Aggies, could be big down the stretch, particularly, keeping Eastham out of foul trouble, let him do his thing offensively as well.
I'll certainly say I've gained a new level of confidence with Chris Loof, especially on the defensive end, as Coach McDevitt had mentioned this last week. In late clock situations where he gets switched onto a guard, he held his own in a few of those situations on Thursday night against New Mexico State. So I look forward to seeing him continue in that role as being a defensive force down low, and then the backcourt defense, as you touched on with Buford, is a guy that we really need desperately this week to stay on the floor, give us quality minutes, as well as Shake, another guy that has kind of stepped up in that situation. So, but let's move on. Lady Raiders, they have a 3-game homestand coming up beginning on Thursday as well with Jacksonville State. I don't want to be honest with you. I don't want to spend too much time previewing these upcoming games because I think this is anticipated blowouts coming ahead. Jacksonville State, they've won. Jacksonville State is doing better than I necessarily anticipated them doing. Same could be said for Kennesaw State, who only has 2 wins, but they're kind of having a rude awakening into their first season in Conference USA. But I think the home court is where things lie. But I'm more focused on that get right game next Saturday against Western Kentucky here at the Glass House. The ladies got off to slow starts on Thursday and Saturday this last week on the road in the West Coast swing. Always challenging for a multitude of reasons. If it's the travel with El Paso, is it the altitude? But they looked a lot better on Saturday, that second half. Boulder Rava earned herself a Conference USA Player of the Week honors. So I think, again, that gives you some level of confidence in this team. But I really hope, again, we've circled next Saturday as a big game for a multitude of reasons, mostly, again, to get right from that loss in Bowling Green earlier this year.
You don't want to look too far ahead, of course, if you're the Lady Raiders. Obviously, Jack State is a team that plays really good defense, and particularly plays really good defense at home. Does not travel quite as well on the road. But, when you're a team like Middle that maybe does not have quite as much offensive firepower as they have had in recent years when Savannah Wheeler was running the point, that can leave you susceptible if you just have a really cold shooting night from a couple of your key players. But it was something they were able to overcome in Jacksonville. It's something I think is less of a concern in the Glass House, where they tend to break out of those cold snaps a little bit quicker, as most teams do in their home gym. And then, Kennesaw State's got, a player that I think is probably going to be first team all conference, Princess Harden, who sort of kept them in almost every game so far. They're not really getting blown out as a team. And large part because she's averaging, a 15, 16-point double-double most nights out of the 4 spot. Somebody very dangerous, somebody that they're going to have to, double in the post and do some creative things defensively to hold her to her own. And could provide some challenges there. But like you said, Middle's way more talented at the guards positions in particular than both of these two teams. Anastasia has a good bit of height on every single big that these two teams can throw at them. So if they run their offense and execute, it should be games that they feel confident going into. And that sets up a really big matchup the week after if they take care of business this week.
Absolutely. I look forward to the Lady Raiders in the Glass House this week. Again, they start on Thursday against Jacksonville State at 6:30, so make sure you're there. And, of course, on the Saturday matchup with Kennesaw State. Now, let's switch over. We're going to take just a quick break from the Sam and Jake show, and we'll bring on Coach Bryce Brentz to talk a little softball, and we'll be right back.
Did you know the Blue Raider podcast has an online store? You can now support your favorite podcast by checking out our selection at our website, blueraiderpodcast.com. And stay tuned for new merchandise releases as we collaborate with athletes in NIL partnerships.
As we take a break with basketball talk, it's time to move forward with more spring sport previews. We are now talking softball with Assistant Coach Bryce Brentz. Coach Brentz, how's it going?
Doing well.
Going into your second season here with the Blue Raiders. I know you have a storied past. You're a member of the 2020 Blue Raider Hall of Fame here. Obviously, a illustrious career here with the Blue Raiders. I want to say this with Coach Breeden. He had mentioned this in last year's episode about who you are as a person and how much this university means to you. And what was kind of the path for you after you ended your career playing in the Red Sox organization to coming back to MTSU? What was kind of that process like? Was it an immediate response as far as getting back to the university as quickly as possible?
Actually, no. So when I got done professionally at 2020 with COVID. I'd signed to go back to AAA again with the Red Sox, and then got a phone call like pretty much right before reporting for spring training that, hey, we're making a lot of cuts. I mean, I knew it was coming. There was reports before that a lot of most of the organizations were going to be cutting out several teams and a lot of older talent just because of the fact that it is a young man's game. And being, I think I was 30, 31, ended up being a little older, so like a dog years, So I knew it was coming, and then didn't really have any problems. Did some things that worked in insurance a little bit, and then didn't like that. I hated being indoors all the time. Former teammate of mine, Tyler Burnett, has started a turf company, very successful turf company, Goat Turf, and so I gave him a call and was going to go into went into that. Was going to go into like some more sports stuff related to turf industry, and then after about a year, I got this random phone call. Didn't answer it, and I got a text from that same number saying, "This is Coach Breeden from MTSU softball. Want to know if you want to interview for the hitting coach job." And so I went to my wife, and her being the mayor of Murfreesboro that she is, knowing everybody, I was just like, "Hey, do you know the head coach of softball at MTSU?" And she was, "Yeah, Coach Breeden, good, yeah, great guy. Why?" He was. I was like, "Well, he just called me." She goes, "You should call him back." And it was just timing couldn't have been any better. My wife and I was wanting to get back in, and I guess I left out this in between that time from being released from the Red Sox until taking the job. I did go play one stint of indie ball. I said I would never do that. And after some lessons, after years, still had the ability to impact the ball. And I was like, I still got, it's kind of like that old Rocky, was it Rocky 6 or something, when he's like still got some demons in the basement. So I went out and played. Unfortunately, body just couldn't stay healthy, which was the story of my life. And came back from almost an Achilles tear. And then on the way up there, I said, Lord, if this is what if there's a way to do this, I know you'll make it happen. But if you want me to be done, make it quick. And I mean, it was like a week and a half later, I got hit in the hand, broken hand. And I was like, we're good. And went home, had no problems. And then that phone call arrived. And as they say, the rest is history.
Wow, it's quite the path, and as you touched on it, God kind of has his mysterious ways of leading you in that direction. I guess the follow-up question is, now that you've done it for a season, coaching that is, how, as far as your feet underneath yourself, how are you feeling in that role, as well as I'm sure you've had your rounds of recruiting and kind of adjusting to that side of things. How have you adjusted to coaching?
Honestly, it really wasn't that big of an adjustment. When people ask like, how's work? I'm like, I wouldn't know. I don't have a job. I love it. Being around, like from my background, just being around the best players in the world with some of the best instruction in the world. It's not that hard to pick up on stuff. And, the old saying, success leaves clues. So even though I was in the private sector, like in between off seasons every year, I would give lessons and stuff. So that was basically my coaching experience, but most of my experiences was actually on the field. So being in their shoes, knowing that, hey, in this situation, this is what's probably trying to happen. They're trying to do, and, getting certain, little things like in softball would be, in base running. Obviously the field is much smaller, base paths, 60 feet instead of 90. So it's a lot faster game, which is really cool to watch. But when I got into softball, it was really like, all right, there's a few things that would not translate to baseball as much, but majority of it does. And so when I got in there, number one question was like, well, how are you going to teach them to hit a rise ball? And, I'm like, well, they don't call it a rise strike for a reason. It's a ball. So it was like our first or second inter squad. And everyone's like, look down. look down, look down. And everybody's still chasing up, and they're also chasing down. And I'm in like my first week, and I'm actually with the girls, like on the, cage, whatever. I'm just sitting here kind of like just taking it all in. And then I'm like, so are you looking down? Yeah. Okay. So why'd you swing at 2 balls out of your neck if you were looking down? I'm like, when you follow the ball, your eyes follow the ball. If it goes up, guess where you're going? So why don't you just set your sights at the top of the zone? Like, what's the highest pitch you want to hit? Well, I want it right here. Okay. Well, when you go up there next at bat, I don't care what the result is, but just don't swing at the pitch that's higher than that. If it's south of that line, you have more time. And they kind of look at you like, what? I'm like, yeah, the further the ball is from the barrel, the more time you have. So if I throw one down and away versus I throw the same pitch up and in, you're going to have to swing at that pitch up and in a heck of a whole lot faster than you will at the one down and away. Can we agree? Yeah. Okay. So if you set your sights for her hardest pitch, outer third, and you go, that's the highest pitch I want to hit. But if it stays on that line within margin, I'm going. If it gets north of that line, I'm stopping. And yeah, well, you were looking down and you chased the, pitch up here. So let's reverse it and look up and see what happens. And that's kind of been a blessing because a lot of the girls, like, they just show up, play, they get loose, they play, they hit off the tee. Like, their whole life has been like that now. Like, so you can't fault them for that. It's just literally how softball is set up, where you go in and they just hit. There's no scouting. There might be a little bit from some of the coaches, but for the most part, their whole life is they show up, get loose, basically like a show and go. And we very rarely did that in baseball. We would do like on a travel day where we played the night before, got up at, got in at the apartment at like, I don't know, midnight, got up at 4, flew to, North Carolina or South Carolina, played there. And then that would be a day, you'd be a show and go. Hey, we got like 4 hours of sleep. We, traveled across the hemisphere. Like, we're just going to show up and go. They literally do it every day. So when I'm trying to like implement some routines and like a scouting report and, this and that, it was kind of like, that's a lot. Like, we're talking about the percentages of what she's going to throw in an 0-0 count. That's really all that matters. And then what they're going to do with runners in scoring position. The 2 biggest things you really want to know is, well, what's their bread and butter? Well, they'll show it to you when runners in scoring position because that's what they're going to go to. That's what they trust the most. And then as a hitter, you're always kind of like going, I kind of want to take a chance here. Well, is the highest batting average pitch on the planet in baseball and softball. So if you want to know those numbers, like, hey, she throws 5 pitches. All right. One of them's a changeup. She throws that 7% of the time, regardless of the situation. So you basically got a 93% chance of seeing something between 62 and 65, Pick your spot at the plate. If it's there, hammer it. And just little things like that, like trying to pick up. A big adjustment was the changeup. A lot of these girls don't have access to machines. We do a lot of machine work. A lot of colleges we do a ton of machine work, and that's universal. Especially when you have 18 hitters, they all got to get their hours in throughout the week. A lot of it's in 3 or 4 group settings. We have 2 cages, so it's like 2 and 2 rotating different drills and whatnot. So, but a lot of it blows me away. They didn't really hit a changeup, and I'm going, why would you not want to add that to your arsenal? If she's throwing 65, usually the changeup's about an 8 to 10 mile an hour difference. Okay. Well, then if she throws a curve, screw, a rise, and a drop, and all 3 of those pitches are within 3 miles an hour of each other, you're basically got 4 pitches that are the same, just speed-wise. They're basically a fastball with a wrinkle. And then you got 1 pitch that's the equalizer, which is a changeup. And you see a lot of girls like, I don't care if you're not supposed to hit the changeup. You're just supposed to manage it, survive. And we would always get beat. And I'm going, this makes no sense, girls. Like, if you're trying to do damage out in front of the home plate, how are you late on a changeup? Well, we're told to hit it backside. I'm like, what? Yeah. So I had to ask them, I said, how many of y'all have been taught hit backside changeups? And everybody raises their hands. well, how many hits have you gotten backside? Like, I think I had like one person, 2 people raise their hand. Like, I hit it over the first baseman and got a double. I'm like, so was it a hard shot? Like, no, I got, oh, so you got jammed and you duck farted it over the first baseman's head and you hit it in that little Bermuda Triangle and got a really good result on paper, but it looked ugly on, yeah, okay. All right, raise of hands. How many y'all, where do you hit the changeup the hardest? Is it pull side or backside? Everybody raises their hand, pull side. Like, again, you got one job, survive. Nobody wants to get beat pull side. So if they throw a changeup and you have the ability to go get it and hit it hard, pull side for power, kill somebody in the stands for all I care. Like, just yank it out of there. All it's going to do is show the opposing pitching coach, like, you can't get us out on changeups either. We'll go get it and we'll survive until we get our pitch. And we're going to add that to our arsenal. And they've bought in. It took some time. We've had some funny swings and some funny interactions when seeing some girls when they have to try to manage both the hard and the soft. But I tell them, look, you got 5 pitches, 4 of them the same speed, one's different. Be good at hitting the first 4. And if, like they used to say in baseball, like, if you want to be good at the curveball, hitting the curveball, don't miss the fastball. Well, it also translates over to softball. If you want to be really good at hitting the changeup, don't miss the hard one. Don't miss your pitch. Be good at ball striking. And that skill, yes, mechanics matter, but a lot of times working on that skill can get thrown off because of mechanics. And so that's where the balance is. And that's universal. And so I think the girls have had to do a little bit more adjusting to me than I have to them. But we've had a great time doing it because I try to keep it simple. We keep it loose. There's times for mechanics. There's times for just having a really good general thought, and let's just go to work.
That's a great segue into my next question. When we talk about the returning talent that you have here on this team, the power numbers were up last year, and a big, core of your team returns. And I will start things off with Ansley Blevins. But really, I want to hear from you. Some of these players that are coming back that were on last year's rosters, those that obviously were contributors like the Lexi Medlocks and the Ava Brooks, but some of these other faces that we may not have seen a lot last year, who are you looking to kind of see take that next step, and what does that next step look like? I'm sure the easy answer is more home runs or a better batting average, but for you as a hitting coach, someone who obviously is a lot more finer to the details, what is the next step for some of these girls?
A lot of it is just understanding who they are as a player, what their strengths are. So every hitting coach, every coach in America wants their players to hit for a higher average, walk more, strike out less, hit for more power. Unfortunately, there's only like a handful of those people walking around on earth, even in baseball. Not everybody, like you said, like you see all the contracts on ESPN of these guys making hundreds of millions of dollars, but they're a handful of people. Those are the top 1% of the top 1%. Not everybody's making those deals. And so a lot of people stay in the league for a long time because they know who they are. So you take a girl like a Mexi Medlock. She comes in defensively, great center fielder, great outfielder, can play all 3. Speed, got a great arm. Sorry, thing went blank. Got a great arm. Has really great bat to ball skills. Problem with Lexi is when she gets in the game at times, she can get I think she gets a little questionable, a little doubtful. And so a girl like her, when she's clicking, it's like, hey, and I love her, she's a goofball. And Lexi's the one where it's like, hey, I need you timed up to hit this pitch on their outer third to center field. Play out in front of the plate. If you're a tick late, she'll hit a double or a backside homer. And then you get a girl like Blevins. Hey, Blevs, we had she started off slow. Her rookie numbers freshman year were like 230 or something with like 6. And then and I kept trying to figure out, and with her, like she has a really beautiful swing. Like everybody else, we can all screw it up based on different things, but her ability, we just couldn't find a spot for her hands, and got her into a position where I was like, hey, look, she's 6 feet tall. We're staring at each other in the eyes when we're talking. Really long levered girl, long arms, long legs, and extremely flexible. And I can't remember. It was right when we came back from Florida. So we're on week 3, and I'm just looking at them like, I cannot figure out why this girl cannot take swing from the cage swing into the game. And we're looking at it, and we see some film, and because of her flexibility, like if you were looking at the camera from center field, like they show on any baseball game, right? You could see her hands literally behind her head, because she's the most flexible human being I've ever, like, you ever seen like a toddler who can like put their knees on the ground, their ankles are behind them, and kind of like, yeah, she can do that to this day. It's ridiculous. And but because she was so flexible, we had to get her hands further away from her body, so when they actually counter on the forward move, they're actually more lined up behind that front shoulder, ready to fire, versus super slotted deep. And now it takes so long, and that's why she was always late. And then she just went on a tear. I mean, arguably probably the best tear I've ever seen, a man or female, for like 2 or 3 weekends in a row. It was in midweek 2. It was either a home run, a walk, double, or just missed another home run. I mean, she had games where it was, 2 for 2 with a walk, 2 homers, 2 for 2, with a walk, 2 homers, 2 for 3. But, it was just retarded. And I was like, wow, a girl like her coming back, man, she's got a target on her back, only on conference player. So for her, I'll tell her, like, it's really easy. If somebody's gonna look at the lineup, they're gonna circle your name and go, this girl's not beating me today. So your approach is really simple. When you get up there, you have to take what they give you. And if that means it's the pitcher's pitch middle, away, take it. You have the ability to hit that ball and put it out, because it's still 215 feet to right center, and her miss hit can go 240. You're just going to have to take what they give you, especially away, to earn that mistake middle end that you can go put it out in the parking lot. And what's going to be important for her is whoever's batting after her, who can give her protection. Anise Harvey is another gifted athlete. Probably the only person after when I first showed up that I didn't even want to change anything about her. I didn't want to change anything about her swing, about her move. The only thing I wanted to change was just when she moved forward, she would push off her backside and get close on the ball and like tie herself up. So just working with her was just like, keep everything the same, but let's understand what it means to stay anchored into the ground with this back heel as you move forward, and let your swing rip that off. And she's had a full fall. She hit really well. I think she hit over 400 in the fall. Now that she's healthy, coming back, she's starting to pick it up. So then we got a Garcia, another girl who has probably the most power of anybody in the nation. I say that wholeheartedly. I would put her up, as far as like who can hit a ball further. I will put Garcia up against any female softball player in the nation, just for that. Now, getting that to translate more into the game, she had 4 last year. If this girl, we're still working on her path and getting her to trust that turn, which she does pretty well. Like anybody else, we get into the game, a lot of things can change, but she's had enough time that I think it's not going to be an issue. And so these girls, like the vets, are going to have to carry us, but we also have some incredible freshman talent that's going to be in there, and they're going to have to just grow. And we're going to have to provide some stability from the upperclassmen, so that way they can have time for those bats to develop. And they're not far off. A couple of them are pretty squared away as they are. So I think it's going to be an interesting mix. I don't shoot for the records. This is a ball striking event is what we play. And the good news is that the fence never got further for them. So, when I was 12, the field was 200. When I turned 13, it went to 400. It doubled. When they were 12, it's the same size as it was today. So they've gotten bigger, they've gotten stronger, same as their opponents, same as the pitching, but it's still a ball striking contest. So if you touch this thing, most likely it's probably going to leave the yard if you square it up, because the game's fast. They're, like I said, they're bigger, they're stronger, and even a slight miss hit can be enough to get it out of the park. So I think where we're going to be at, we're more athletic. So I think we're going to be better this year. Pitching's gotten better. It's just going to be, how do we manage it? And then obviously what we think is going to happen usually doesn't happen throughout the course of the season. So there will be some changes that's going to occur. It always happens that way. But if our staples remain constant and they do what they're capable of, and don't get too high, don't get too low, just stay even keel and ride the flow, we're going to be fine.
You touched a little bit there on the incoming freshmen. A lot of new faces. You got 4 that have transferred in, and then you got 9 new freshmen. Any names that we should be, aware of that could maybe make a splash this season?
The top 2 that jump off right now is Jana Want and Layla Amon. Two girls who had, in my opinion, some higher level instruction before they got here. And, just coming in and you're just like, it's nice to see. Jana has probably one of the best moves to the ball that we have on the team as a freshman. And just trying to just pour into her that, hey, take over the game. Like, when she's on defense, like, it's really simple. If you can get to that ball, I want you to get the ball. I want the best athlete to have the ball in their hands. And so if you can get to it, go make the play. Pretty basic. And at the plate, do your thing. Don't rush your process. Sometimes she gets a little amped and she'll just miss. I mean, she had, I think she went this past weekend, even though she went 0 for the weekend, she's just missing balls by milliliters, where if she's just, like I said, a millimeter, maybe at max a centimeter north on top of that ball, she's easily got 4 or 5 home runs. I mean, she's an incredibly talented ball striker. It's just getting her to have that mentality that, like, I'm good. I can compete. I earned it. And I'm going to make my name. Layla, 2-way girl, going to be a big part of our pitching staff, has tremendous change of speed, can go north, can drop it, can change it, curve it, just, tall athletic frame. Also got a bat. Probably, I mean, if you look at strictly numbers wise, coming out of high school, probably the best bat that we had coming in, even though she's more talented or more touted as a pitcher. She was in a really tough district in Florida. They had a lot of Division I signees, arms, pitchers going there, and I think she hit like 500. So, and she's definitely one of those girls, like, when she gets reps, I mean, she's a dangerous hitter. I feel like, and I love that, because to me, why would we not want to have athletic girls who can do multiple things? I like them because they're problem solvers, and we're not stuck with, well, this girl's got a good bat, but she can only play this position. Where a girl, you take like a Jana, she could play short, she could play second, she could play third. You stick her in the outfield, just an extremely athletic girl that, that, hey, no matter where I plug her in, she's going to be fine. And her bat's going to, pick up for if there is a mistake, which there's very little. So those 2 freshmen stand out the most. We got another one, I think, most improved overall, Jacine Espinal, our pitcher, sophomore pitcher. She's really, taking the bull by the horns this year. Her mental prowess has been it's been fun to watch. I mean, she gets the ball. She's a bulldog, and she's earned that nickname. And so we're looking forward to that. And like I said, I try to stay out of the circle. But just, it's not hard to miss, where it's like, hey, if Jacine keeps doing what she's doing right now, she's going to carry us, especially, in those times where the arms start getting a little tired.
Yeah, well, I hate, you said you want to stay out of the circle, but I'm going to bring you back in for just a second, just to touch on the pitching situation, because you have a lot of talented arms. You talked about Layla Amon coming in. Just a stat on her: 673 strikeouts, over 400 innings in high school. I mean, that's 1.5 strikeouts per inning. Astounding number, no matter where you play. But like as you touched on, coming from Florida, there's a lot of talent down there. Mary returns. And then Tori Kaufman, who's a junior college All-American coming from Walter State Community College. So it sounds like there's going to be a little bit of a battle. And luckily for you guys, early in the season, you have so many games back-to-back with the tournaments like this Friday, starting at the spring games. What in the circle, it's kind of a good problem to have with all these special talents.
It is. I mean, last year we dealt with some unfortunate injuries that really limited the arms that we had. Of course, the year before, we had Gretchen, now our pitching coach. When you don't replace a 20-game winner, I mean, that's half the wins of your season. And when you don't replace that, it's tough. And, with Tori coming in, Mary coming back as just a reliable veteran that doesn't matter what situation you put her in, she's going to handle it professionally. That's probably the biggest thing that I love about her is her attitude, her work ethic. It really is. It's as pro as it can get. And then, like I said, Tori coming in, and it's a good mix. We got Tori. She's like your big workhorse, just a tall, thick, absolute bulldog. And she's out here humming it. And then after that, you got Justine coming in. So now you're going from a girl who's 6 feet tall down to, 5'6", who's just humming it in there as well, giving a different change of eyesight and arm speed. And then Layla, who's can literally throw it all. Mary, again, a kind of the similar build as Justine, but more of a spinny girl who can throw you off with movement and precision. So it's a good mix. It's a good mix.
Talking about this upcoming weekend, you start there in Leesburg, Florida. You got Louisville on Friday, amongst many other teams you're going to play this weekend. Lastly, as we close up this preview, I want to hear your expectations for this group. I know one thing that Coach Breeden has always had with this program is a team that's fun-loving. They love each other. They're a good team. I want to hear with all these new additions, is that still pretty much the case? And how much are you putting on these veterans that are returning to kind of I say corral these players in and, have a better season turnout this year than, say, last year?
Yeah, 100%. We really didn't have to really explain a whole lot. They knew it. And we told them prior to the season that, hey, I don't really put a whole lot of stock in the preseason polls. I understand them because they have to be obviously picked because of last year's success. And that's just part of the territory. And I've told the girls this, I was a part of the best teams that MTSU's ever produced. We had great seniors. And we all knew walking into it that we were going to get picked dead last. We knew that after we got put out in the conference tournament my freshman year. And the culture is we didn't care. We're going to show up. Our culture was, if we had practice at 2, we had early BP at 1. If you weren't in the cages by like noon or 12:15, you might as well just go ahead, go out to the field, wait for early BP, because you're not getting in the cages. And then after practice, it was pretty much the same thing. Like a lot of guys would stay in, and we just worked on our craft, and then we're picked dead last, and then we go out here and we have the most wins in MTSU history. We go to the regional. We set a lot of team records, offensively. And so I don't really put a lot of stake in it. Now, does our culture promote that? 100%. One of the things that we improved on was we got some technology. So we got a hit track set in there, got some other things. And so allowing them to actually see their ball flight, see what's going on, have more information to dial in their swing has kept girls around there. Of course, you can do a lot of fun games on the hit track, so they'll mess around. I don't really don't care. As long as you're in there hitting, it doesn't bother me. But this year we're going to have to get, we're just going to have the everybody just know that they belong. We played Louisville in the spring or in the fall, and we lost both to them, and we should have split with them. And that was a situation where, and I spoke to the girls about it. Like, they did not get our best. We got their best, and we were right there with them, but we didn't play it the way we should have played. I mean, I still felt we had some of the younger ones that, maybe saw an ACC patch on their jersey and got a little intimidated. And that's where I'm going, we can't be doing this. And so I'm excited we get to play them again, because we all know that we didn't perform the way we were capable of performing. And if we go out there and, and I tell girls all the time, go out here and play wide open for 7 innings, for 21 outs. Let's just go out here and play like we own the daggum field, and let's just see where we end up after 21 outs. I really don't care. But when you see some of the tentativeness and there's no commitment to an approach, there's no commitment to the task at hand, whether it be trying to move the runner or trying to get a good pitch to score that runner, then that's where, I'm like, hey, why are we freaking out right now? Like, have you played this game before? Yes, it's the same thing. They're just in a different uniform now. You played against these girls your entire life. You played against them in summer ball. Now they're just in college. Well, they got here. So did you. You belong here. And if you know that you played your best, and this is what, I keep telling girls, like, you've done all this work to get you to this point. Why are you afraid of the moment? If you're afraid of the moment, then clearly you didn't put enough work in, and that's why you're worried, because it's time to pay the piper. But if you sit there and put the work in, then when that time comes, you're going to be prepared for the moment. And this is where I like to use the Navy SEALs thing when they talk about, like, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of preparation. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your preparation. So if you're not prepared, wherever you end up, that's where you're going to be. But if you are prepared, you'll be fine. But it's not like if you haven't been training for, this 63-mile-an-hour drop ball over and over again, because you're going to see it, and then you get to the spot. If you're questioning yourself, then you're not ready. And that's where I'm just going, girls, if you don't have confidence, then clearly you have not put the work in to have that confidence. It's very simple. It's not a complicated formula. It's also not easy. You have to put the work in. But if you do that, I promise you will get rewarded. It may not be the first time, but you will get rewarded. So our culture has been pretty good. Our girls they take care of each other. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better situation. We even have girls that have, they talk to the incoming 2025 that haven't even been here. If they post something on social media, our current players are liking it and talking to them, and they're not even on campus yet. And this is one thing that I will say, and I've never heard of it till we brought our first visit in. Coach says you're not going to find anybody like our people. You can find, they might have some better fundamental things, whether it be, they might have a bigger stadium. They might have a better facility. They might have something else around that is a little bit better, but the people, you're not going to find better people. And that's why I love softball. I love our group of girls, because it really is. It's a fun time, but they also, once the lines come in, or once we get between the lines, it's time to bear down, and they do a pretty good job of that. So, you hate sounding like it's just one big happy family, because that's really cliche, but they are, and any team is. But it's only for a short while too. And that's where I think, like, when we have the group that we have right now, and then the group coming after them, and this nucleus that we're building, it's going to be a fun time for MTSU softball. And I feel like we're going to be doing some special things in this program. And Coach Breeden has built this thing up from the bottom, because when I was here, before he was here, when I was playing, I think they won like 5 or 7 games. And then now and only had like one championship in the history of the program. And, he came in from his stellar high school career, and now he's built a place where they have now 2 championships. And he has like the most wins. So he's built a winning culture. It's demanding like all winning cultures are, but it all feels good. Winning cures everything. So and I think the girls understand that, especially after last year. The veterans know that, like, hey, we were better than what our record showed us, but we just came up short. And they've built a nucleus where it's like, hey, after practice, we stay and hit. After, they're doing the right things. And so we're going to find out come Friday.
Absolutely. Well, look forward to that nucleus and program culture continuing to build this season, as you touched on, the nucleus of strong talent there, and then all these new additions, hopefully to add to it. As you said, this weekend, I'll say it again, the spring games against Louisville and the Lady Raiders will not be in Murfreesboro for their first home action until the end of February, but plenty of preseason stuff to watch with the Lady Raiders. We look forward to it. Coach Bryce Brentz, I appreciate you taking the time to talk a little Lady Raiders softball with us, and we wish you and the ladies the best of luck this year.
Thanks for having us.
The BRP is proudly partnered with Rivals Network affiliate GoMiddle.com. Subscribe for premium content for all the inside scoop on MTSU athletics, recruiting, or join our free forums to discuss today's episode and all things Blue Raiders. The BRP is also partnered with the College Huddle, a nationwide collaborative effort with over 80 Division I programs represented. Check out the website at thecollegehuddle.com to catch up on all college football content with daily articles and episodes provided by the largest college podcast community on the internet. We're back with Sam Doughton here. We're going to be talking a little bit of softball just to kind of wrap up that conversation with Coach Brentz. Lots of great information from the hitting coach. I really look forward to this team this year. There at the end kind of gives you a little pep talk about what this team can be, focusing on a lot of the intangibles. Sam, this team has a good nucleus that returns. You have an all-conference USA preseason favorite in Ansley Blevins, who had quite the year, power numbers last year as well as the batting average numbers. But there's so many players that are a part of that starting lineup that are going to return, as well as some good faces that Coach Brentz brought up. But this team in particular, I think there's a lot to be excited about, particularly with the fall and the close matchups that they had with some ACC teams.
Yeah, no, this team's got a lot of talent, and clearly they went out on the recruiting trail and brought in a lot of talent this year to supplement what they had after, a season I think everyone would agree was a little disappointing for them last year, coming off the NCAA tournament run, just a year before as well. Had lost some good players from that team, but still had a lot of that core back. And, now I think they realized they needed to retool and get some new blood into the program and some new fire. And they kept the right people, with them, Blevins, like you mentioned, Ava Tepe is one of my favorite players on the team, brings high energy every day, and her power numbers jumped way up, thanks to Coach Brentz's coaching this past year as well. She's sort of that first base, catcher option. And then, you got some returning players that are looking to step up, players like Lexi Medlock, in the outfield. You got a player like Mary Martinez in the circle that could be a big piece of the pitching staff that looks to have more depth this year than they've had recently. Even that NCAA tournament team really only had 2 pitchers that they consistently trusted, Gretchen Mead, who's obviously on the coaching staff now, and Cameron Karsich, who graduated last year. So, still a lot of question marks. I think that's probably why they were predicted 9th in the preseason poll that the coaches came out with, last month. But a lot of opportunity to rise up quickly from that level, given the talent that they brought in, particularly, some of those junior college players that you've mentioned that have done well in the past. So I'm excited to see them. I think we'll get a good barometer pretty early. They're playing Rutgers and Louisville this weekend, their first 2 games. If they can, win both of those, that's going to show you that this is a team that can be really competitive really early in Conference USA play.
And another piece that I know that he didn't necessarily mention, but he's still young in his career of college coaching. Same could be said for Gretchen Mead, both of which you have kind of had to juggle the recruiting side of things. And this is kind of their second full year where they've been able to get some of these recruits, this new blood, as you're talking about. And he's excited about these players that he's recruited. And it's a big freshman class. I've got 9 freshmen that are coming in. You've got a good handful of them from the mid-state. But one that in particular that he pointed out was Leela Amon, who is going to be a 2-way player, which did catch me a little bit by surprise. 402 career innings pitched, 673 strikeouts. Again, that's a 1.5 strikeouts per inning pitched, and then a 1.72 career ERA in the always competitive Florida. high school league. And then Jana Want, someone who I think they're anticipating playing the middle infield this year. Over the fall, 11 RBIs, led the team in batting average at 343, again, as an incoming freshman, and they played some ACC talent this year. So big excitement there. Tori Kaufman is a newcomer. She's going to be the junior college All-American that I had alluded to in the interview with Brentz, coming from Walter State. As far as her sophomore season there in Walters, she went 21-4 overall, over 156 innings pitched with 272 strikeouts and a sub-1 ERA. And again, that's over 156 innings pitched, and that's pretty incredible. And that's a Walter State team that did make it to the World Series. I want to say they made it to the final 8 of the World Series last year. So she's played in big games, played against big teams for that matter. So I talk about the depth that Gretchen Mead's going to have to deal with this year, something that Mary Martinez, I know, comes from Louisiana Tech, who was a big pickup last year, going to be taking a step forward with Karsich graduating. But you've got Martinez, you've got Kaufman. It sounds like Layla Amon's going to be kind of in that mix. Jessine Espinal is another one that Coach Brentz was very complimentary of. So that's 4 pitchers alone that are kind of going to be vying for playing time these first couple weekends.
Well, I mean, the key in softball is you got to have 2. You got to have 2 really good ones to reach those postseason things, because typically you're going to be switching those arms back and forth in a lot of these 3-game series once you get to conference play, and then particularly when you get into a tournament setting where you're looking to get a bid into the postseason, or hopefully if you win the Conference USA, then get into the NCAA tournament. And so if you have 2 arms, you can withstand a lot of different pressure situations. If it's not somebody's particular day, you can quickly go to the bullpen and get the second pitcher in there. Or if both of them are on, you can really, let both of them go and throw complete games. It's very different than the baseball world you and I, come from, Jake, where you got to have a lot of pitchers just because of the pressure that baseball arms face compared to softball's pitching motion. So it's good they have 4 that they feel like they can, throw out there early. But I think the key is figuring out who your 2 are going to be out of that 4 pretty fast. And hopefully they get some answers this weekend against some pretty decent competition in their group in the spring games. Like I said, Louisville, Rutgers, obviously, the headliners, but Cleveland State and Radford aren't slouches either. So you'll get a good chance to evaluate sort of what you have in the circle very early on in the season, and that can hopefully lead to better results down the line.
Absolutely. Again, that starts this weekend on Friday. They will be against Louisville at 3 p.m. on Friday. Now, lastly, a little spring sport. Last week, we were able to sit down with Coach Myers, talk a little baseball, a program that I'm pretty excited about, and something that, again, there's a little juice flowing within the walls of Reese Smith Junior Field about this program. He's got a lot of good guys coming in. I think one thing me and Connor really harped on last week was how good this bullpen could potentially be. Just a lot of guys that he can kind of lean on this year. And again, you have your top guys, you have Alderman, you've got Trace Phillips back. But again, having that depth is going to be vital, not only to winning the midweek game, but really being competitive in Conference USA for that Sunday matchup in particular, which is always your rubber match. You've got to have a guy there on that Sunday matchup. So for baseball, what are some pointers that you're kind of looking at as far as this team proving that they have turned things around this year?
Well, the stuff coming out of fall camp that you heard all the time from that group was how the velo numbers for the pitchers were up. And that whatever offseason program that they went through, or maybe just the guys that they brought in, because they did bring in about half the roster is brand new this season. We're really getting it up there in the pitch speed, which is not something that was necessarily true consistently last year. For that staff. So, velocity isn't everything, as you and I both know, Jake, but it is a lot of things, in college baseball. So they're able to throw hard and throw for strikes, with good breaking pitches. That's a pretty good formula to be pretty successful if you can consistently, have guys that have that ability coming out of the pen. And so, I'm hoping to see that velocity start high and stay high, as the season goes on for them. But, I'm also very curious, sort of how the lineup works out. Like you said, you have a couple key pieces back from last year, but you're also, replacing a lot of, Briggs Rudder scored a lot of runs, drove in a lot of runs for this team last year. Who's replacing him at catcher? How are you replacing his production throughout the lineup, building them back up in aggregate? Still a question mark for this team. And, at the Groundhog Day luncheon this past week, something that both the coaches and the captains were not super privy on giving answers to, understandably so. They don't want to give away the whole lineup, before opening day. But, something that, good problem to have where you have some options. But, at some point, somebody's got to play, and you hope they can find the right buttons to push, early enough in the season to be able to take advantage of a non-conference schedule that has some challenging moments, but at least in the weekend slate, has some very winnable games to hopefully, get the ball rolling and get everybody feeling good before conference play starts, which promises to always be tough in CUSA.
Lots of home games for the Raiders this year, which is always a good thing. They start off next Friday at home against Bowling Green, so look forward to that season going. Sam, I appreciate you taking the time to join us, but real quick, I know, and I think this is the coolest thing ever that you have to share, because I know you're in your office right now, you're in your cubicle. Share with the fans this, in my opinion, one of the coolest things of memorabilia, Conference USA memorabilia that you collected over the weekend.
Yeah, so this is a pretty wild story. So last year, I don't know if most folks remember the men's basketball game against UTEP at the Glass House last season, but it was a crazy game, double overtime. I think final score was like 96-90. Justin Porter scored 41 points. Very crazy game. I missed most of it because I was the interim baseball SID, for that given day. Baseball had already started. So, but as I was walking through, sort of helping, the office, sort of at the end of the night. The visitors' locker room in the Murphy Center is right next to where the athletic communications office is. And as I was walking back to my cubicle, I spotted one of the stools that UTEP uses during timeouts, because nobody sits on the bench during a timeout anymore. They all pull out seats and go sit in the middle of the court. I don't know how they got started, but that's just sort of the way it works. And one of those was sitting sort of, in a heap over on the side. So I picked it up, dusted it off, figured out why it was on the side, which is that one of the latches that kept it open. Was broken, but with some finagling, I was able to get it to stay open for me, but as a footstool, not as something that anyone could sit on, with their full weight necessarily. But it was good on the office, gave me a place to put my legs up for the past 11 months. It's been pretty nice. And then, with UTEP coming back into town this week, I asked, Coach McDevitt, I was like, hey, I don't know how well you know Joe Golding, but I think it'd be pretty fun if he could sign this for me, because I've kept it, for 11 months now. Nick thought it was very funny I kept it for 11 months, and Joe also thought it was very funny I kept it for 11 months. So when the minors came in for practice on Friday night, I stayed late after work, and here it is. It's the UTEP thing, and that's the signature from Joe Golding, who could not have been nicer, could not have been more gracious and cordial. I actually learned from Nick that he and Nick and Chris Massaro actually tend to be a group that hangs out together in Destin, Florida for the Conference USA meetings. So they're very tight as sort of as a trio there. Obviously you got to find friends, in that setting sometimes when you're in meetings all day to hang out with in slower moments. Could not have been nicer, could not have been better at playing along with this little silly thing that I was doing. But it's been a good footstool for me, and it's something that I'm definitely going to keep and, travel with me wherever I move to, for the rest of my life for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the coolest pieces of memorabilia in Conference USA history, in my opinion. I think a Joe Golding signed broken stool is so fitting, as intense of a guy as he is. I do hear
that was the funniest part, Jake, is that part of the reason I wanted him to sign is because I wanted to ask him how did you break this? Because I missed whatever moment it happened during the game. And Joe didn't really remember, one thing he told Nick was that he's obviously broken many of those, before in the past, as intense as we've seen him get during the game. But yeah, he said he thinks he threw it that night, which would be a way that, the latch that specifically is broken is not, it's not a super nice piece of hardware necessarily. Not these are mass produced, for these teams to use. So, but still, if you give it a left force, it'll there. And there have been times where my foot has slipped and unhooked it, and my foot flops through it as well. But it's been a fun thing that's just sort of hung out in my office, and might need to make the move, from the office to my home office someday as well.
Very cool stuff. Well, Sam, again, I appreciate you stopping by on such short notice to talk a little hoops, talk a little spring sports with us. Real quickly, where you got anything new that the fans should be keeping an eye on for?
Yeah, actually, so we're recording a new episode of the Coaches Check-In, the final episode of sort of the Coaches Check-In that we need to record with the still relatively new women's golf coach, Lauren Wamsley, who you have on this podcast as well. I was supposed to do one, before we broke for winter break, but she, had her baby literally the day that we were supposed to record. It was when the baby was born. So this is sort of a rescheduled one. We're recording it later this week, and it should be out, within the week afterward. So that's something fun, personally that we're doing. if you'd like more Blue Raider audio in your ear holes, wherever you are, we have a bunch of athlete-led podcasts going on right now. We have the Glass House Hoops podcast, which alternates men's and women's episodes. Isaiah Lightsey and Jacob Johnson are taking the lead for the men, and Jalen Gregory and Tamia Scott are taking the lead for the women as the host for that. New players every week, as their guests. But definitely more of a focus on, sort of their personal lives and sort of getting to know them, a little bit more outside of the game of basketball, but plenty of hoops talk as well. And then, I think the one that we've had the most fun recording recently has been Nick and Roman's Empire, which is, the football podcast. Nick Vadiato, Roman Gagliano, two quarterbacks, they've interviewed Derek Mason. They've interviewed Bodie Reeder. We got one with Jamie Blatnick, strength coach coming up. And, I haven't sat in on every recording, but I've heard that those have gotten very entertaining in the conversations that Nick and Roman are able to pull out of their coaches. Recorded one with a couple offensive linemen this week as well. So those come out weekly. I think that date's a Thursday on the GoBlueRaiders.com podcast feed on Spotify is probably your best place to find those as well. But they are uploaded to YouTube. We have started doing video with that as well. So that's a fun project. I'm not doing as much on the audio side with the office right now, but something they wanted to focus on, get some player-led initiatives going, and as we sort of experiment with it too. So that's definitely something very interesting. We'd love to hear y'all's feedback on it. Either find my email on the website, sam.doughton@mtsu.edu, or you can reach out through all the various social channels, X, Instagram, so on and so forth, and let us know what you think, because I think the player stuff's pretty fun. I'm learning a lot every time I listen to it, mostly just about who they are. So I think it's pretty interesting for a lot of our fans to check out.
The family of MTSU podcasts. I'm just a bystander, but we all get great information. And I do recommend those podcasts because you see these players in a different light along with their teammates. Only so much information I can pull from these guys, but it's always great to kind of, again, put them in a different atmosphere that isn't necessarily so sports centric. So, but Sam, again, appreciate you, all that you do. Look forward to you. And I'm sure you'll be on again at some point later on this year. So once again, I appreciate you.
Jake, looking forward to it. Always a pleasure. Have a great rest of your week.
Absolutely. Well, fans, again, I appreciate you tuning in. And until next time, go Blue.